Okay, let's unpack this. We often hear about certain groups being labeled a model minority.
Mm-hmm.
On the surface, it sounds incredibly positive, doesn't it? A group celebrated for their hard work, their drive for academic success, their overall achievements.
Right. It implies a kind of seamless integration, maybe even prosperity.
Exactly. But what if this seemingly good, even flattering stereotype actually hides a far more complex and, frankly, damaging reality?
Yeah.
What if it's not a badge of honor at all, but a really heavy burden, especially for the young people and families it supposedly praises?
Well, what's truly fascinating and deeply concerning here is that while the term model minority appears complimentary, almost like a compliment, right?
Yeah, sounds like one.
The model minority myth, or MMM as we might call it, actually masks significant struggles. It amplifies invisible barriers and creates immense, often silent pressure on individuals.
Silent pressure.
Yeah. And for you, as parents and teachers, understanding this phenomenon is absolutely crucial
Why is that?
because it directly impacts the mental well-being, the educational development, and, the overall thriving of many young people, particularly within Asian American communities who are so often and so narrowly the focus of this myth.
And that's exactly why we're taking a deep dive into the model minority myths today.
Yeah.
We're going to pull back the curtain on its surprising and rather troubling origins.
Mm-hmm. Troubling is right.
We'll explore the very real, often devastating impact it has on youth and families, drawing on some fascinating recent research, particularly looking at Korean immigrant families.
Yeah, that research is quite revealing.
And, most importantly, we'll equip you with what you can actually do as parents and teachers to dismantle its harmful effects and foster a truly supportive, empowering environment for every child.
That's the goal.
Our mission isn't just to inform you, it's to shed a bright, clear light on this complex issue, provide you with the facts you need, and give you actionable insights. Real things you can use to better support the children and families in your lives. So let's start at the beginning, because I think for many of us, the idea of a model minority feels almost like common knowledge.
Yeah, it's just out there.
Right. It's something that's just out there, a sort of natural descriptor of certain groups. But like so many deeply ingrained ideas that shape our society, the truth is it has a very specific and quite troubling origin. It wasn't something that just naturally emerged.
You've hit on a critical point there. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we see that the term model minority isn't a natural descriptor at all. It was explicitly coined.
Coined by who?
By a sociologist, William Peterson, in a 1966 New York Times Magazine article. The title was Success Story, Japanese American Style.
1966. Yeah.
And it's essential to understand that this wasn't just an innocent observation of achievement, nor was it really a celebration in the way we might think today. It was, from its very inception, a political statement.
A political statement in 1966. That's really significant when you think about the historical context of that era.
A
Civil rights movement. So what exactly is this myth? What did Peterson mean by it, according to the sources?
Well, the definition, the core idea of a model minority myth, purports that Asian Americans as this broad, singular group.
We'll get into.
Right, which is a huge problem in itself. But the myth says they possess certain inherent positive traits, like strong family values, a deep respect for education, and exceptional work ethic.
Things generally seen as good.
Exactly. Things that supposedly lead to academic, occupational, and economic success more frequently and, crucially, with greater ease than other racial minority groups in the United States.
With ease. So no struggle involved.
That's the implication. It suggests they achieve this success solely through their individual efforts, facing few, if any, barriers along the way. It basically implies systemic racism or discrimination isn't a significant factor in their lives.
Wow, right.
It's often presented as a positive stereotype, but as we'll definitely delve into, that positive label is incredibly deceptive. It masks a far darker intention.
Here's where it gets really interesting and, frankly, quite unsettling. Because if we look at that 1966 context, the height of the civil rights movement, this wasn't just about praising one group for their perceived hard work.
No.
It was a rhetorical device, wasn't it? A narrative tool with a very specific, troubling agenda. It wasn't benign. It was designed to divide.
Precisely. The myth was explicitly coined to denigrate the burgeoning civil rights movement, which was, gaining significant momentum at the time.
How did it do that?
Well, Peterson's article, for instance, drew a direct, very calculated comparison between Japanese Americans. And it's absolutely crucial to remember here, this was just 2 decades after many of them, American citizens, had been unjustly incarcerated in concentration camps during World War II.
Right, still very fresh.
Very fresh. He compared them to African Americans. And the underlying insidious implication was, if Japanese Americans could supposedly achieve success without protest, without demanding government intervention, without fighting for their rights,
Even after being imprisoned by their own government.
even after that profound injustice, then the implication was that other groups, particularly Black Americans, should also be able to do so, without protest, without demanding change.
So it was a way to silence dissent.
It was a clear, manipulative attempt to blame the victim. It suggested that the struggles of other marginalized groups were their own fault, a result of their own actions or lack thereof, and not the result of systemic racism.
Which was exactly what the civil rights movement was fighting against.
Precisely. And by doing so, it effectively delegitimized calls for racial justice from Black and brown communities. It undermined their entire argument.
So it wasn't just a compliment, it was a weaponized comparison designed to silence and divide. That's a truly powerful and often overlooked aspect of its origin.
Absolutely. This myth functions as what experts call a racial framing. Essentially, it's a specific, distorted lens through which society is encouraged to view race, almost like a propaganda tool.
That's right.
And through this lens, it propagates an elusive ideology of colorblindness and American meritocracy.
Colorblindness and meritocracy. What did that mean in practice?
Well, what that really means is it tricks people into believing that everyone starts on equal footing, that success is purely a matter of individual effort, that anyone can just pull themselves up by their bootstrap.
Which sounds nice, but ignores reality.
It completely sidesteps the deeply entrenched systemic barriers like historical discrimination, redlining, unequal access to quality education, biases in hiring. I mean, the list goes on that many racialized groups face.
It's a convenient narrative if you don't want to address those barriers.
It's a dangerous, seductive illusion because it makes people believe racism isn't a problem anymore, or that if someone isn't succeeding, well, it's entirely their own fault. Historically, this model minority myth was actively weaponized against Black and brown communities, labeling them problem minorities for precisely that reason, for actively fighting against systemic racism, while supposedly passive Asian Americans were held up as the model to emulate.
Passive versus problem. That's quite a framing.
It is. And this positioning has significant sociopolitical implications. Things like fostering Black and Asian conflicts by creating resentment and competition and creating this buffer group dynamic.
A buffer group.
Yeah, where Asian Americans are sort of placed in this precarious position between white and other minority groups in a racial hierarchy. It isolates them in a way.
Right.
And this raises an important question for you as parents and teachers. How does a stereotype, even one widely perceived as positive, contribute to such widespread, deep-seated, and enduring harm?
How does it?
The answer is by erasing the rich diversity and complex realities within a vast group of people. It simplifies and flattens their experiences into a single, convenient, and ultimately false narrative.
That's a truly powerful point. And it perfectly leads us to our next critical area of discussion. When we talk about Asian Americans, in everyday conversation, it's often treated as one single, homogeneous group. Like a monolith.
Exactly. A monolith.
We hear it in the news and pop culture, even sometimes in educational discussions. But the sources reveal a far more intricate, colorful, and diverse picture, a spectrum of experiences that the myth completely glosses over, rendering countless individual stories invisible.
Exactly. Like all stereotypes, the model minority myth, by its very nature, erases the differences among individuals and ignores the profound diversity of Asian American cultures. And this isn't just an academic distinction. It's absolutely critical for you as parents and teachers to understand when interacting with students and families.
Why is it so critical?
Because it means you cannot assume anything about an individual student or their family based on broad, inaccurate, and frankly harmful generalizations derived from this myth. You just can't. To put it in perspective, Asian Americans comprise at least 43 distinct heterogeneous communities.
43. Wow.
Think about that for a moment. 43 different groups, each with distinctive languages, religions, and sociocultural heritages. It's not a single culture or experience. It's a vibrant tapestry.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Major subgroups include Chinese, Indian, Filipino, Vietnamese, and Korean origin, but there are many, many more, each with their own unique histories, migration patterns, and current circumstances in the U.S.
So Asian American is really just a label.
It's an administrative label, a census category, not a cultural reality. The core insight here is that the myth forces nearly 5 dozen distinct cultures, languages, and histories into a single misleading box.
Right.
It's like trying to describe European as one culture and expecting that to accurately encompass someone from Ireland, someone from Italy, and someone from Finland. It completely misses the point.
That analogy of European really brings it home. It would be absurd to assume all Europeans share the same experiences or socioeconomic status. So how does this diversity play out in real-world terms, particularly economically?
Well, their immigration histories, for example, vary significantly, which profoundly impacts their experiences and resources.
Well, yeah.
For instance, only about 27% of Japanese Americans are immigrants. The vast majority are U.S.-born and have a long, complex history in this country. In stark contrast, a striking 78% of Burmese Americans are foreign-born.
78%, that's a huge difference.
Huge. And this difference in nativity status alone tells you a lot about the varied paths, the generational experiences, the challenges within the broader group, things like language barriers, integration into American society.
So vastly different starting points.
Absolutely. And to further complicate this and directly counter the idea of universal economic success, experts often use the metaphor of an hourglass to describe the socioeconomic status of immigrant populations.
An hourglass, what does that mean?
It means there's a disproportionate concentration of immigrants at both the very top and very bottom of the socioeconomic spectrum, not just clustered in the middle or at the top.
So extremes at both ends.
Exactly. The myth, unfortunately, hides the economic realities of many Asian Americans who may actually have lower net worth or face significantly higher poverty rates than the stereotype suggests.
Can you give an example of that economic range?
Definitely. Consider this. While some Asian subgroups in Los Angeles, like Japanese, Asian Indians, and Chinese, do indeed have higher median net worth than white households.
Okay, fitting the myth somewhat.
Somewhat. But others, such as Filipinos, Vietnamese, and Koreans, have much, much lower net worth. This creates an enormous gap of 25-to-1 within the Asian community in terms of median wealth.
25-to-1, within the same broad group.
Within the same broad Asian label. It showcases immense internal disparities that the model minority label completely erases.
That's staggering.
It is. And remember, the majority of Asian American adults in the U.S. are foreign-born, about 78%. And different waves of immigration have brought people with incredibly diverse circumstances. You have highly skilled immigrants with advanced degrees and professional connections.
Right.
And you also have poor and working class refugees who arrived with very little, often fleeing war-torn countries. Many Southeast Asian refugees, for example, arrived with lower levels of education and fewer skills, facing significant challenges upon resettlement that are completely ignored by the myth.
It's astounding how one label can obscure such vast differences in wealth and starting points. And I imagine this diversity extends profoundly into education, which, as we mentioned, is often seen as the cornerstone of the model minority stereotype.
It absolutely does. And this is where the myth truly unravels for parents and teachers, where it can be most harmful in the classroom.
How so?
While the average academic attainment for Asian Americans might appear high when you just look at the aggregate data.
The overall number looks good.
Right. But this figure ranges widely among AA groups. What that means is, while some communities are indeed excelling, many others are being completely left behind or overlooked. Think of it like a class average where a few perfect scores hide dozens of struggling grades.
That's a great analogy.
For example, Taiwanese and Asian Indian individuals are most likely to attain college degrees, often 77%, or even 82% holding a bachelor's or higher.
Wow, very high rates.
Incredibly impressive by any standard. But in stark contrast, individuals of Bhutanese, Laotian, Mien, Cambodian, Burmese, and Hmong descent are the least likely to attain college degrees. Their college attainment rates can be as low as 15% to 25%.
15% compared to over 80.
Exactly. That is a massive, almost unthinkable disparity that the model minority label completely erases. And what does that erasure lead to?
A lack of support.
A profound lack of targeted support for those who need it most. Their needs are invisible because the average looks fine, and looking at high school completion further highlights these disparities, especially for educators. The share of Asian American young people aged 18-24 without a high school degree was 7% in 2022.
Which is below the national average.
Right, below the national average of 12%. So that looks good on the surface, supports the myth. But here's the crucial detail. This figure jumps to 23% for Thai young adults.
23%.
23, and 12% for both Cambodian and Burmese young adults. So for these specific groups, they are at or even way above the national average for not completing high school.
So the average hides these struggling groups.
Completely hides them. If you only look at the aggregate Asian American number, you completely miss these vulnerable student populations who need targeted intervention.
That's critical for teachers to know.
Absolutely. And then there are school discipline disparities. Pacific Islander students, often grouped under the broader Asian American and Pacific Islander, or AAPI umbrella in data collection.
Right, AAPI.
They are suspended at a significantly higher rate, 4.3%, than both Asian American students overall, 0.9%, and white students, 2.7%.
Wow, higher than white students too.
Yes. This indicates significant and often ignored inequities in school discipline, suggesting that the system itself may be failing certain groups within this incredibly diverse population. They aren't fitting the quiet, compliant stereotype, perhaps, and are facing harsher consequences.
So what does this all mean for you as a parent or a teacher navigating your daily interactions with students and families?
Well, it means we simply cannot generalize. We just can't. These statistics clearly show that the myth obscures a vast array of unique experiences, deeply personal needs, and often silent struggles.
Right.
Assuming that all Asian American students are academically gifted, don't face challenges, or come from affluent backgrounds is not only incorrect, it actively harms those who are quietly struggling or whose experiences don't fit the narrow, stereotypical mold.
How does it harm them?
It creates a blind spot in our compassion, in our ability to offer tailored support. We don't see their need because the myth tells us they don't have needs.
Beyond these broad societal implications and the stark statistical disparities we've just discussed, this myth has deeply personal, insidious consequences, especially for young people.
Yes, deeply personal.
It's not just a collection of numbers or a historical footnote. It's a lived experience of immense, often silent pressure that can take a heavy, invisible toll on their mental and emotional well-being.
You're absolutely right. The internalized model minority myth.
Internalized, meaning they start to believe it themselves.
Exactly. When individuals or families begin to believe and act on these societal stereotypes themselves, it has specific components, things like achievement orientation and unrestricted mobility.
Okay, well, those...
Well, these components can exert significant psychological pressure on individuals, leading to various adverse outcomes. And this is particularly salient for you as parents and teachers who are guiding young minds every day and who might even inadvertently reinforce these components through expectations or language.
Right, we might be part of the problem without realizing it.
Potentially. Let's break down those two components. Achievement orientation refers to a strong, often overwhelming drive for academic and professional success.
The focus on grades, top schools.
Exactly. Top grades, prestigious universities, high-status, high-income careers like medicine or engineering. It's not just about doing well, it's about being the best, about never settling.
Okay, and the second one, unrestricted mobility.
Unrestricted mobility, yes. This implies a deeply held belief that one can achieve success purely through individual effort, unimpeded by systemic barriers.
So ignoring things like racism or economic background.
Pretty much. It dismisses external factors that genuinely impact a person's life trajectory. And this belief can be particularly insidious because it fosters a sense of personal failure if success isn't easily attained, if I just worked harder.
It must be my fault.
Exactly. It must be my fault. Now, a compelling study on Korean immigrant families shed light on how these components operate within a family unit. It was really interesting.
What did it find?
It found that mothers' achievement orientation, that drive for success, was indirectly related to their youth's academic performance. Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
But crucially, this relationship was mediated through the youth's belief in unrestricted mobility.
So the mother's drive influenced the child's belief that they could succeed without barriers.
Yes. It highlights how parental beliefs, often rooted in their own experiences, their sacrifices, their hopes for their children, how they can powerfully shape children's pathways and their understanding of how the world works and what's expected of them. But here's the kicker, and this is truly important for parents listening. The mother's internalized model minority myth actually had harmful relationships to youth's depression and antisocial behaviors.
Harmful, even though it might lead to academic success.
Yes. In fact, these maternal beliefs showed greater direct and indirect associations with youth outcomes than youth's own internalized M&M.
Wow. So the pressure from parents can be even more damaging than the pressure kids put on themselves.
The study suggests exactly that. The pressure from parents, even when it comes from a place of deep love and hope, can be incredibly impactful and potentially detrimental.
That's a really profound finding. It's not just about a child feeling pressure from society, but about that pressure being amplified or even initiated within the family unit itself. What kind of toll does that take on these young people?
The heavy toll on youth is undeniable, and it often remains hidden. It's often invisible.
Hmm.
Even when high academic performance was achieved, the study found it often came at the cost of elevated depression.
So success on paper, but suffering underneath.
Exactly. This is not a win. It's a trade-off that compromises a young person's fundamental well-being for a very narrow definition of success.
Right.
And the outcomes of internalized MMM can be convoluted, meaning they're complex. They're affected by various factors.
Like what?
Like which specific component of the myth is emphasized? Is it pride in achievement, or is it intense pressure to achieve? The youth's actual academic performance matters too, and even the specific school context.
The school context, how does that play a role?
Well, for example, beliefs in unrestricted mobility were positively related to depression and anxiety in a predominantly Asian high school.
More depression in an Asian school. Why?
Perhaps because the peer pressure and expectations are higher, more concentrated there. Everyone is expected to fit the mold. But interestingly, those same beliefs were negatively related to stress in a predominantly non-Asian high school.
So less stress in a non-Asian school. That's
Yeah.
counterintuitive.
It suggests the social environment, the peer group, the general academic climate play a huge, nuanced role in how the myth manifests and impacts mental health. Maybe there's less direct comparison or pressure in the non-Asian school context for those specific beliefs. It's complex.
Definitely can apply.
But the bottom line is youth who intensely internalize the model minority myth are especially vulnerable to its harmful effects and profound psychological stress. That constant expectation from teachers, peers, even future employers that you're naturally gifted or destined for success, often in specific fields.
Like STEM fields.
Right, often STEM.
Like so. Yeah.
This can lead to crushing feelings of inadequacy and a sense of being a disappointment if they struggle academically, explore creative interests, or choose to pursue non-traditional paths.
Paths outside medicine or engineering, for example.
Exactly, and this can result in significant anxiety, pervasive feelings of failure, and ultimately burnout.
Burnout is so common.
It is. And one student narrative captured this profound pressure vividly, and it really sticks with you. The student said, "You're so smart, there's no way your brain could be bad. You're Chinese. You endure. You can't ask for help like white people. That's just how it is for an Asian American."
Wow. You endure. You can't ask for help. That's heartbreaking.
It is. And that single quote encapsulates the profound impact on mental health and, tragically, on help-seeking behaviors. Struggling is seen as a personal failing that must be hidden. Asking for help is perceived as a weakness, a deviation from the expected model.
It's chilling to think about that internal pressure, almost like a silent burden. And it really brings home that even well-intentioned parental hopes, when coupled with these societal myths, can unintentionally lead to such profound internal struggles. How does this dynamic specifically play out within the family structure, especially in immigrant families?
Well, these dynamics extend directly into the family unit, which is often a very strong social sphere for many Asian cultures. The study we mentioned specifically highlighted the importance of understanding the internalized MMM within the microsystem of the close-knit Korean immigrant family relations.
The microsystem of the family.
Yes. Reflecting collectivistic cultural influences where the group's welfare often takes precedence over individual desires, Korean parents often see children as extensions of themselves and assume responsibility for children's success and failure.
An extension of themselves.
Yes. This isn't necessarily negative on its own, but it creates a powerful emotional bond and a sense of shared destiny.
Okay.
But this dynamic can intensify significantly upon immigration. In that context, parents may consider children's academic occupational achievement as their own successful immigration story.
So the child's success proved the parent's sacrifice was worth it.
Exactly. Think about the immense weight this places on a child. They are literally carrying their parents' hopes, their validation, their proof that the sacrifices made to come to a new country were worthwhile.
That's a huge burden for a kid.
Huge. It adds immense pressure on children to meet high parental expectations and compensate for their sacrifices, often feeling like they must repay an unpayable debt. And when this pressure is coupled with what's known as the intergenerational acculturation gap.
The gap between immigrant parents and their more Americanized kids.
Precisely. That growing chasm in understanding and values that often emerges between immigrant parents who might hold on to their traditional culture and their children who are rapidly adapting to the new, often very different culture around them.
That must cause tension.
It creates communication difficulties, cultural clashes at home, and often a profound sense of isolation for the children. They feel caught between two worlds, unable to fully satisfy either. And that can dramatically intensify the psychological toll on children, leading to feelings of not belonging, shame, and increased mental health struggles.
It's a powerful, deeply complex dynamic, isn't it? Where parents' hopes and profound sacrifices, combined with deeply ingrained cultural values, unintentionally create this heavy burden that children are expected to carry, often in silence.
Exactly, and silence is key.
It makes you wonder how these internalized pressures affect their ability to even seek help when they need it most.
And that leads us directly to a critical, often neglected consequence: mental health silence.
Silence around mental health.
Yes. The model minority myth, by portraying Asian Americans as universally successful and problem-free, contributes to myths about the lack of social and mental health problems among Asian Americans.
Because if you're the model, you don't have problems.
That's the damaging assumption. Because they are perceived as so capable and resilient, their struggles are frequently ignored or dismissed by the broader system. And this leads to inadequate resources, specifically tailored for culturally appropriate mental health care for this population.
Are there numbers on that?
The statistics are stark and revealing. Asian Americans are between 2 and 5 times less likely to receive mental health services than their white peers, even after controlling for the prevalence of mental health disorders.
2 to 5 times less likely.
Yes, and this isn't because they don't experience mental health challenges, it's because they face immense barriers to getting help.
What kind of barriers are we talking about?
Well, there are significant cultural barriers at play here that are vital for parents and teachers to recognize.
Yeah.
These include deeply internalized stigma against mental health problems within many Asian cultures. The idea that discussing such issues is a sign of weakness, brings shame upon the family, or should be kept within the family. Don't air dirty laundry.
Right, that sense of shame.
There's also the very practical issue of a lack of English proficiency for many immigrants, which makes navigating the healthcare system daunting, and a general lack of knowledge about available community resources, especially if those resources aren't promoted in their native languages.
If you don't know health exists, you can't get it.
Exactly. Moreover, there is often a strong emphasis on filial responsibility, family cohesion, and harmony over individual happiness.
Family first.
Yes. This can lead to significant cultural pressure to care for ill family members within the family itself, and a deep reluctance to seek institutional care. The idea of institutionalizing a family member, even for mental health support, carries a heavy negative connotation in some cultures. It can feel like abandoning one's family duty.
So cultural values can actively prevent seeking outside help.
They can. And then beyond the cultural aspects, there are significant practical challenges. A major one is the lack of a diverse mental health provider workforce and the absence of culturally informed treatment options for Asian people.
Not enough therapists who understand their background.
Exactly. Many clinicians simply lack the training, cultural competence, or even the basic understanding to assess or treat race-based trauma, or to appreciate the nuances of immigrant experiences, or the pressures of the MMM.
What happens then?
This often leads to culturally unresponsive or insensitive care that further traumatizes the patient. Imagine seeking help, reaching out in a moment of vulnerability, only to feel more misunderstood or even harmed by the very system meant to support you.
It's terrible. A double trauma.
It makes you wonder how many people just give up at that point, retreating further into silence. And non-citizens or individuals with limited English proficiency face increased barriers. Things like immigration-related fears and lack of access to linguistically appropriate services. It's just a complex web of obstacles to navigate, compounded by a general distrust of institutions that may not understand their cultural context or legal status. This raises an important question for us. How do we bridge these immense gaps? How do we ensure that families and youth receive the support they need without the added burden of this myth? without requiring them to assimilate into a system that doesn't understand or validate them.
That's a crucial point, and it perfectly illustrates how the individual pressures of the model minority myth are intricately woven into the fabric of society. It's not just about a child feeling internal pressure or a family facing cultural barrier.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's about how these personal struggles intersect with systemic barriers, creating and perpetuating injustice. And this extends to the often overlooked challenges immigrant families face in accessing vital support services that could help them navigate these very issues. It's a systemic problem, not just an individual one.
Absolutely. The myth functions as a powerful racial wedge, and it's important to be unequivocally clear here. The myth is anti-Black at its core.
Anti-Black, how so?
It has long been weaponized against Black and brown communities labeled problem minorities. The insidious argument it promotes is that if Asian Americans can succeed without demanding government intervention or protesting, then the struggles of other groups are simply their own fault, not the result of systemic racism.
So it pits groups against each other.
Yes. This narrative blames the victim, it demonizes efforts for social justice, and thereby delegitimizes calls for racial justice from other marginalized communities. This is a historical pattern that continues to cause division and undermine solidarity among marginalized communities, preventing collective action against systemic oppression.
Keeping groups divided benefits the status quo.
Precisely. Furthermore, the myth also operates alongside the myth of Asian Americans as perpetual foreigner.
Perpetual foreigners, meaning they're never seen as truly American.
Exactly. This means that even those who achieve immense success, who are U.S. citizens, maybe lived here for generations, they may still be viewed as not truly American. This creates a double bind. You're expected to be a model, but never fully belong. You're always seen as other.
That must be incredibly frustrating.
It is. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the invisibility of anti-Asian racism is a profound issue. The hashtag #StopAsianHate movement on Twitter, for instance, powerfully highlighted that Asian hate is not new.
Right. It did just start with the pandemic.
No, it highlighted that the surge of racism experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic was deeply rooted in historical discrimination, not just a recent phenomenon. And tweeters on the platform advocated strongly and consistently for the inclusion of Asian American history in K-12 curricula.
Education as a tool against racism.
Recognizing that education and understanding are key tools in dismantling these harmful narratives and fostering true empathy and solidarity across racial lines.
So it's not only that the myth creates internal pressure and divides communities, but it also helps uphold a system that makes it incredibly difficult for many immigrant families, especially those who don't fit the model, to access the very support they need.
Exactly. The system itself presents barriers.
Can you walk us through some of those systemic barriers that parents and teachers might encounter when trying to help families access services?
Certainly. Beyond the racial politics, immigrant families face numerous, often overwhelming, systemic barriers to accessing basic health and human services programs, things that are absolutely essential for their well-being and their children's success.
Okay.
For parents, simply navigating these systems can feel like trying to solve an impossible puzzle.
Where does the difficulty start?
First, consider the eligibility rules for programs like Medicaid, CHP for healthcare, SNF for food assistance, TNF for income support. These rules are incredibly complex.
Oh, complex.
They vary not only by immigration status, but also by the date of immigration, by individual state laws, and even by sub-state jurisdictions like counties.
So it changes depending on where you live and when you arrived.
Exactly. This labyrinthine complexity makes it incredibly difficult for families, let alone service providers sometimes, to accurately determine what one is even eligible for. It often requires legal expertise just to decipher.
Wow. Okay. Complex rules. What else?
Then there's the critical issue of administrative discretion. States and counties have broad authority in designing application forms, web portals, outreach materials, language services.
So they decide how easy or hard it is to apply.
Pretty much. This leads to huge, inconsistent variability and accessibility across different areas. So it's not just that the rules are complex, but how you access information about those rules can vary wildly depending on where you live.
Can you give us a concrete example of how that might play out for a family?
Sure. Imagine a family just moved from a state with robust, multilingual support applications and websites available in several common immigrant languages, clear in-person assistance readily available.
Okay. Sounds helpful.
Their new county, however, might only offer English forms with an English-only website and perhaps a single overwhelmed caseworker who doesn't speak their language. The discretion here means that while federal resources might exist, the local implementation is a patchwork, leaving many families completely in the dark or without help.
And especially in newer immigrant destinations.
Exactly. Many new destination states and rural or suburban areas simply lack established infrastructures for non-English languages and culturally familiar providers, leaving immigrant families in these areas with very limited options.
Okay, so complex rules, varying access, language must be a big one too.
Language and literacy are understandably massive barriers. Many immigrants do not speak English proficiently or at all. While applications may be available in Spanish in some places, English often dominates online portals, making crucial information about benefits, eligibility, how to apply simply inaccessible.
So even if you qualify, you might not know it or know how to prove it.
Right. Worse, there's a troubling reliance of public agencies and service providers on untrained interpreters, such as friends or applicants' own minor children.
Using kids to interpret.
Yes. This poses serious ethical and practical risks for clients. Confidentiality issues when discussing sensitive personal or financial matters.
I can imagine.
And unreliable interpretation, especially when a child is put in the impossible position of interpreting complex adult matters for their parents. How accurate can that be?
Not very, I'd guess.
And phone-based interpretation, while sometimes available, also often reduces quality because of the cumbersome three-way communication, the lack of visual cues, and sometimes the non-private setting. It can hinder trust and full disclosure.
Okay. What about cultural factors beyond language?
Cultural beliefs and mistrust also play a profound role. Some immigrant families, especially from less developed countries or those with experiences of corrupt governments back home, may feel ashamed to use public benefits.
Why ashamed?
Due to strong cultural values of hard work, self-reliance, family privacy, this can lead them to avoid applying for benefits they desperately need, even when legally eligible.
So pride gets in the way.
Or perhaps a deep-seated distrust of government assistance. Cultural differences can also make discussing sensitive subjects difficult for caseworkers.
Like what?
One vivid example recounted in the sources involved a Somali family where the wife applied for benefits. Due to cultural roles, she didn't know her husband's exact income.
Okay.
The caseworker mistakenly thought the wife was lying and withholding information, when in fact she simply didn't possess that specific knowledge within her cultural context. It wasn't deception, it was cultural difference.
A complete misunderstanding based on cultural assumptions.
Exactly. Furthermore, U.S. public assistance laws are often written with a nuclear family in mind.
Mom, dad, kids.
Right. This makes it incredibly hard to apply rules to the larger, often multi-generational extended family units common in many cultures, leading to further confusion and denied benefits.
The system isn't designed for their reality.
Often, no. Logistical barriers are also very real and often overlooked.
Like what? Getting time off work.
Exactly. Work obligations frequently prevent parents from accessing services during typical agency hours. As one service provider lamented, when we're open, they're working.
A simple but huge obstacle.
Huge for hourly workers who can't take time off without losing pay or risking their job. Reliance on word of mouth for information, while common in close-knit communities, can also lead to pervasive misperceptions about programs.
Bad information spreading.
Yes, or incomplete information. And it limits access for groups with smaller social networks who aren't part of well-established immigrant communities with robust information sharing structures.
Okay. And finally, you mentioned fear.
Yes, a pervasive climate of fear poses an immense, often invisible barrier. The growth of immigration enforcement programs contributed to the general climate of fear and mistrust, particularly in states with strong enforcement activities.
Fear of deportation or family separation.
Exactly. This leads some immigrants, especially those in mixed status families, where some family members might be undocumented while others are citizens or legal residents, to avoid all public programs and interactions with public service providers.
Even things they're legally entitled to.
Even things their citizen children are entitled to. They might avoid doctors, pull children out of schools, avoid food banks, all for fear of being identified or separated.
That's devastating.
It is. Even refugees, despite having broader eligibility for benefits and often desperately needing support, face acute barriers. Language, literacy, but also past trauma from government officials in their home countries can make them more wary of government and less likely to seek help, even from legitimate social services here.
You can really see how all these systemic issues intersect with the model minority myth. It creates a truly heartbreaking double bind for many families.
It really does.
On one hand, there's the internal and external pressure to embody success and self-reliance, which makes seeking help feel like a personal failure, a sign that they're not living up to the model.
The shame factor.
And on the other hand, the systemic barriers we just discussed make that help incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to access, even when it's desperately needed for a child's mental health, educational support, or other essential needs.
A double bind is a perfect way to put it.
It's a truly complex, layered challenge that demands our attention and action. So this is where the rubber truly meets the road.
Right.
If we understand the problem, if we've seen the intricate web of origins and profound impacts, what are the concrete, actionable steps you, as a parent or teacher, can take to address it? How can we counteract these deeply ingrained issues both at home and in the classroom to foster environments where all children, especially those impacted by this myth, can truly thrive?
That's the crucial question. For parents and teachers, directly challenging the model minority myth involves fostering environments that prioritize individual well-being, authentic self-expression, and diverse forms of success over narrow stereotypical achievements.
Moving beyond the stereotype.
Exactly. It's about seeing the whole child with all their unique strengths, struggles, and aspirations, not just the perceived model.
Okay, let's start with parents. What can parents do at home?
For parents, one of the most powerful things you can do to nurture whole, resilient individuals is to emphasize values over metrics.
Values over grades.
Yes. Prioritize and celebrate creativity, curiosity, kindness, and personal growth over grades, test scores, or career status. These are the qualities that build character and genuine happiness, you know. It's absolutely crucial to express unconditional love and support, regardless of academic or professional choices. One expert advises saying something like, I expect you to always do your best, but I love you no matter what.
That's powerful. Love isn't conditional on success.
Exactly. That simple yet profound statement helps children understand that your love isn't conditional on their achievements, but on who they are as a person. It creates a safe space for them to explore, to fail, and to grow without fear of losing your affection.
Okay, unconditional love. What else?
Alongside that, actively encourage and support diverse interests. Support your children's passions outside of traditionally safe fields like medicine or engineering.
Even if it's art or music or something less prestigious.
Especially then. It could be anything: art, music, skilled trades, culinary arts, entrepreneurship, social work. By validating these interests, by providing resources and encouragement for them to explore these paths, you explicitly show them that success isn't confined to a few narrow paths, and that their unique talents and desires are truly valued.
Broaden the definition of success.
Precisely. Focus on the process, not just the outcome. Emphasize effort, integrity, perseverance, responsibility. Make it crystal clear that your love isn't conditional on specific achievements, but on the effort they put in, the character they demonstrate, the lessons they learn along the way.
Focus on the journey.
Yes. And critically, when children inevitably make mistakes or fall short, how do you respond?
Now with disappointment.
Try to respond with empathy rather than disappointment or anger. For example, instead of, I'm so upset about your low grade, try a more supportive, inquisitive approach. I can see that this grade is disappointing for you, and perhaps you're feeling down about it. What do you think might have happened here? What might help next time?
More collaborative.
Yes. This shift makes children more open to learning from their experiences rather than hiding them or fearing retribution.
Okay. Anything else for parents?
One more thing. Allow children to learn from natural consequences, in a safe and supportive way, of course.
Like if they forget their homework.
Exactly. If they forget homework, for instance, resist the urge to rush it to school for them. Let them experience the natural consequence, perhaps a lower grade, a conversation with their teacher. This teaches responsibility and accountability without making your love conditional on perfection. It's about letting them navigate challenges with your support, not removing every single obstacle for them.
Building resilience.
That's the goal.
These strategies are really about building that internal resilience and a strong, authentic sense of self-worth, ensuring children feel truly valued for who they are, not just what they achieve or how they compare to a myth.
Yes.
It's crucial for their long-term happiness and well-being, far beyond any single test score or career path. Okay, now for teachers. What can teachers do in the classroom?
For teachers, creating inclusive and equitable classrooms is paramount in dismantling this myth. The classroom is a key environment.
Where do they start?
First, you must recognize the pervasive societal expectations fueled by the model minority myth. Be acutely aware that peers, teachers, and even future employers may hold these expectations of academic gifts, especially in certain subjects like math and science, for your Asian American students.
So check your own assumptions first.
Absolutely. Recognize this can lead to those students feeling inadequacy and a sense of being a disappointment if they struggle or have interests outside these narrow academic fields. This awareness is the absolute first step towards not perpetuating the myth yourself.
Got awareness first. Then what?
Next, integrate diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, courses and training into your curriculum and professional development. This helps all students and educators understand and address racial inequalities.
Learning about the history.
Yes, covering the true history of race relations, including the origins of the model minority myth and the impact of systemic racism on all communities. This not only builds a culture of learning about these issues, but also helps educators recognize and address their own unconscious biases.
Self-reflection for teachers.
Crucial. Furthermore, encourage open discussions about race and racism within your classroom. Create safe, structured spaces for students to express their thoughts and experiences.
How can teachers do that safely?
Using literature, history, current events as starting points. This fosters empathy, critical thinking, and empowers students to become informed advocates for change, for themselves and for others.
Okay. What about resources? We talked about disparities there.
Yes, provide equitable access to learning resources for all students. Actively address disparities by investing in technology, providing devices and internet access for students who need them. Ensuring textbooks and library resources are readily available and up-to-date, exploring online libraries. No student should be at a disadvantage due to lack of resources.
Level the playing field.
Exactly. Celebrating diversity is also key and goes beyond just a single cultural fair or food day.
More than surface level.
Much more. Highlight the unique beauty and richness of different cultures and backgrounds through diverse book collections, culturally relevant artwork, music, and by encouraging students to share their traditions, languages, and stories in meaningful ways throughout the year. This creates a welcoming environment where every student feels seen, valued, and understood for their unique identity.
Making diversity part of the everyday classroom.
Yes, and provide individualized support through differentiated instruction.
Adapting teaching to different needs.
Right. Adapting teaching methods and materials to meet diverse learning needs. Offer extra tutoring, mentoring, or counseling for students facing academic or systemic barriers. This isn't about lowering expectations. It's about providing the tailored support needed for all students to succeed authentically.
Meeting students where they are.
Precisely. Promoting inclusive language is also vital in the classroom. Be mindful of the words you use. Actively avoid stereotypes and use culturally sensitive words to create a safe space and empower students, making them feel accepted, validated, and respected. Your language sets the tone for the entire classroom.
Words matter.
Deeply. Champion equity within your school and district by advocating for policies and resources that promote it.
Like what kind of policies?
Like increased funding for programs that support diverse learners, advocating for a curriculum that genuinely reflects diverse voices and experiences, and pushing for culturally responsive testing practices that don't inherently disadvantage students from certain backgrounds or for whom English is a second language.
Working for systemic change within the school.
Yes, teachers have a powerful voice there. Finally, embrace accountability and model inclusivity yourself. Teachers should self-reflect on their own biases, be open to feedback from students and colleagues, and demonstrate inclusivity and respect in all interactions.
Practice what you preach.
Walking the talk, exactly. It means modeling that all cultures and experiences are valuable, helping students feel seen, respected, and actively engaged. And, crucially, advocate for the inclusion of Asian American history in K-12 curricula.
Like that Illinois law.
Exactly, like Illinois' Teach Act, which mandates covering the history and contributions of Asian Americans in civil rights and other areas. This helps to center their unique needs and experiences, combating the invisibility and erasure that the myth perpetuates, and fostering a more complete understanding of American history for all students.
So many concrete actions for both parents and teachers. That's really helpful.
The key is being intentional and consistent.
We've journeyed through the complex landscape of the model minority myth, from its divisive political origins to its profound, often hidden impact on individuals and families, and we explored what concrete steps can be taken right now, today, in homes and classrooms.
It's been a lot to cover.
It has. And it's clear that this isn't a conversation that ends here. It needs to continue not just within families and schools, but across society, if we are to truly dismantle its harmful effects and build a more equitable future.
Absolutely. The model minority myth, while appearing positive on the surface, fundamentally dehumanizes individuals. It creates invisible barriers that few outsiders recognize.
Mhm.
It reminds us that stereotypes, even seemingly beneficial ones, are always reductive. They erode individuality, they mask genuine struggles, and they obscure the systemic inequities that impact real lives, particularly for young people and families navigating complex cultural expectations and new environments.
So what the goal is.
Our goal as parents and teachers must be to see beyond the myth and nurture the whole child in all their complexity.
As we wrap up this deep dive, consider this provocative thought. If the model minority myth was historically used to pit racial groups against each other and suppress calls for racial justice, what new narratives are we unintentionally perpetuating today?
Good question.
Perhaps even with good intentions. What narratives might be creating similar divisions and silencing the diverse struggles within our communities now? And what will you, as a parent or teacher, do to challenge those narratives and ensure every child you interact with is truly seen, understood, and supported for exactly who they are and all their complexity without being forced into a limiting predetermined mold?